The streets of Harborview had long been marked by fear. Gang tags on brick walls, sirens echoing through the air, and young men convinced they owned the block. When Marcus Carter locked up the rec center with his younger sister Nia at his side, Dre Mather's crew saw easy prey, a devoted coach and a woman they dismissed as powerless. Their mistake was assuming appearances told the whole story. Because while Marcus was known for guiding kids off the streets, Nia carried a past no one saw coming: Navy SEAL training. And when the ambush came, she was ready. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. The streetlights cast long shadows across East Bay Harbor as Nia and Marcus locked up the rec center's double doors. The familiar click of the deadbolt echoed through the empty parking lot. Inside, the smell of rubber soles and fresh paint still lingered from the afternoon's youth basketball practice. "I'm telling you, that little Jerome's got natural talent," Marcus said, tucking the keys into his jacket pocket. His warm laugh carried through the cool evening air. "Reminds me of you at that age, all focus, no quit." Nia smiled, adjusting her backpack strap. "The way he handled that defensive drill today? Kid's got heart." She watched her brother's face light up the way it always did when talking about his students. Teaching these kids meant everything to him. But something felt off tonight. The neighborhood held its breath, like a storm about to break. Fresh gang tags marked territory on brick walls, crude crowns and threats in sharp red paint. A police cruiser crawled past for the third time, its occupants staring straight ahead as shots echoed in the distance. "Let's cut through the lot," Marcus suggested, nodding toward the industrial shortcut they often used. "Get home before Mom's pot roast gets cold." The empty lot stretched before them like a concrete desert, scattered with weeds pushing through cracks in the pavement. Broken glass glittered under security lights mounted on distant warehouses. Their footsteps crunched on gravel as they walked, echoing off metal walls. "You see the look on Ms. Patterson's face when Jerome made that three-pointer?" Marcus continued, his voice carrying in the open space. "That woman's been coming to watch practice every day since her grandson joined the team. Says it keeps him off the streets, gives him something to believe in." Nia nodded, but her attention had shifted. Years of SEAL training had honed her situational awareness to a razor's edge. Something wasn't right. The air felt charged, hostile. Sudden brightness flooded the lot. Engine sounds growled from multiple directions as truck headlights blazed to life, cutting off their path forward and behind. Nia's muscles tensed as car doors slammed in quick succession. Dark figures emerged from the glare, at least 8 of them. The gang's colors were obvious: red bandanas, gold chains, attitude thick as armor. Their leader stepped forward, phone held high to capture whatever came next. Well, if it ain't the community hero and his little sister," one called out, voice dripping with mock respect. "Teaching our kids to play ball instead of learning their real place." Marcus stepped slightly forward, shoulders square. "We don't want any trouble here." "Too bad trouble wants you," another shot back. "Time to clean up the block. Show everyone what happens when people don't take a hint and move along." The racial slurs that followed hit like physical blows. Nia's jaw clenched as she recognized faces from around the neighborhood. Young men she'd seen growing up, now twisted with manufactured hate and false bravado. "Your kind ain't welcome here no more," the leader announced, playing to his phone's camera. "Harborview's getting an upgrade, and you ain't in the plans." Nia's combat-trained mind rapidly assessed the situation. The ambush was too well coordinated to be random. The phone's recording, the practiced intimidation. This was a message being sent. They'd been waiting, watching, learning their routine. Marcus's voice remained steady, though Nia could hear the tension underneath. This neighborhood's been our home for 30 years. We're not going anywhere." Laughter rippled through the gang. Metal clinked as chains were unwound from fists. The sharp scrape of a bat being dragged across concrete set Nia's nerves on edge. "That's where you're wrong, coach," the leader sneered. "Tonight's lesson ain't about basketball." The first attacker stepped forward, chains swinging in lazy circles. His eyes locked on Marcus with predatory focus. Time seemed to slow as the chain whipped through the air toward her brother's head. Nia moved with the fluid precision of her years of training. Her stance shifted subtly, muscles coiled like springs. The cold calculation of combat settled over her like a familiar blanket. These men had no idea what they'd just started. The chain sliced through the air toward Marcus's head. In that fraction of a second, Nia's body responded with the fluid precision drilled into her through years of SEAL training. Her hand shot up, catching the chain mid-swing. The metal links bit into her palm, but she didn't flinch. "Wrong move," she said, her voice carrying the deadly calm of a predator. With a sharp yank, she pulled the chain-wielding attacker off balance. As he stumbled forward, her knee rocketed up, catching him square in the face. Blood sprayed from his nose as he crumpled to the ground, chain clattering beside him. "Take her down!" someone shouted. The gang surged forward, their earlier confidence morphing into ugly rage. A bat whistled through the air. Nia stepped inside the swing, trapped the attacker's arm against her body, and used his own momentum to slam him face first into the hood of their truck. The impact left a human-shaped dent in the metal. "You don't belong here!" another thug charged, switchblade glinting in the headlights. "This ain't your neighborhood no more." Nia moved like water, deflecting the knife thrust with her forearm. Her elbow crashed into his throat, dropping him to his knees. Without pause, she spun, blocking a punch from behind and returning a strike that cracked ribs. "Look at the coach, hiding behind his sister," someone taunted. Phones recorded everything, broadcasting their hate live to whoever was watching. "Big man ain't so tough now." Marcus stood his ground, fists raised. "This is our home," he declared, voice steady despite the chaos. "We're not going anywhere." A shadow moved behind him. "Marcus, down!" Nia shouted, but too late. The bat caught him in the ribs with a sickening crack. As he doubled over, a second swing caught his temple. Blood sprayed across the pavement as Marcus collapsed. Something snapped inside Nia. Her training kept her movements controlled, but now each strike carried lethal intent. A thug rushed her with brass knuckles. She caught his wrist, twisted, and used him as a shield against another attacker. Both went down in a tangle of limbs. A knife slashed at her face. Nia trapped the arm, stepped through, and sent the wielder flying into a nearby dumpster. The impact echoed through the lot like a gunshot. She fought her way to Marcus, each movement a demonstration of perfect violence. "Stay down, race traitor!" Someone kicked at Marcus's prone form. Nia's response was immediate, a precise strike to the knee that left the attacker screaming. With practiced efficiency, she hoisted Marcus into a fireman's carry, distributing his weight across her shoulders just as she'd done countless times in training. His blood dripped warm against her neck. While holding Marcus steady, she reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his phone. Speed dial, one hand keeping balance, the other deflecting a wild punch. "Rafa, lot by the docks. Marcus is down. Bring the rig now." She shoved the phone into her waistband, never breaking stride. A bat swung at her legs. She stepped over it and drove her heel into the attacker's chest. Another tried to grab Marcus. She answered with an elbow strike that shattered his nose. "What the?" someone gasped. "She's military." The realization spread through the gang like wildfire. Their coordinated attack dissolved into hesitation and backward steps. Nia pressed forward, one arm securing Marcus, the other dealing precise devastation to anyone who came close. A chain wrapped around her ankle. She rotated with the pull, using the momentum to kick another attacker in the jaw. The sound of teeth clicking together cut through the night air. "This ain't what we signed up for," one of them muttered, backing away. Others followed, but their phones kept recording, broadcasting their humiliation to whoever had ordered this attack. Nia's breath remained steady as she carried Marcus across the lot. Each step was measured, powerful, her body compensating for his weight with trained precision. Blood and sweat mingled on her skin, but her expression remained carved from stone. Red and white lights suddenly flooded the scene as Rafa's ambulance screeched to a halt at the lot's edge. The emergency lights painted everything in surreal colors, reflecting off the broken glass and scattered weapons. Nia crossed the final distance in long strides, her body showing no sign of fatigue despite the fight and Marcus's weight. Rafa jumped out of the driver's seat, his experienced hands already reaching for Marcus, as Nia carefully lowered him. Only when Marcus was secure in Rafa's care did Nia turn back toward the gang. Her stance remained combat-ready, shoulders squared, hands loose and prepared. Blood, both hers and theirs, marked her knuckles. The attackers stood frozen, phones still recording, as the truth sank in. They had expected an easy target, a simple intimidation. Instead, they'd found something else entirely. The words hung in the air like smoke. "She's not a victim. She's a soldier." The fluorescent lights of Harbor View General cast harsh shadows across Marcus's bruised face as he lay still in the hospital bed. Monitors beeped steadily, tracking his vital signs. Nia stood at the window, her body tense despite her exhaustion. Her knuckles were wrapped in gauze, but she'd refused further treatment until she knew Marcus would be okay. Rafa entered the room, still in his EMT uniform, carrying 2 cups of coffee. "He's stable," he said, handing one to Nia. "Concussion, 3 cracked ribs, but nothing permanent. Marcus is tough. He'll pull through." Nia took the coffee, but didn't drink. Those cowards knew exactly what they were doing. This wasn't random. "About that," Rafa lowered his voice, glancing at the door. "You remember that new surveillance system the city installed last month? The one they bragged would make our streets safer?" Nia turned from the window, her attention sharp. "What about it?" "That lot where they jumped you. There's a camera on the warehouse roof. High def, night vision, the works." A hint of satisfaction crept into Rafa's voice. "Got everything. The ambush, the fight, their faces, all of it." "You're sure?" Nia's fingers tightened around the coffee cup. "Crystal clear footage, and that's not all." Rafa pulled out his phone. "While you were getting checked out, I talked to some folks at the corner store. At least a dozen people saw those trucks circling earlier. Mrs. Jenkins from the flower shop said they were parked there for hours, waiting." Hope flickered in Nia's chest for the first time since the attack. "Premeditated. We can prove it wasn't just some street fight. Already got 3 witnesses willing to make statements." Rafa showed her his phone screen. A community message board lit up with posts about the incident. People are tired of being scared. They're ready to talk. The door creaked open, and Aunt Vi stepped in. Despite the late hour, she was perfectly put together in her church clothes, silver hair neatly pinned back. Her presence filled the small room with quiet authority. "Child," she said, crossing to hug Nia. "Soon as I heard, I came straight from Bible study." She pulled back to examine Nia's injuries with a critical eye. "Look at what they did to my babies." "Vi, we've got them," Nia said, some of her military bearing softening under her aunt's concern. "There's surveillance footage, witnesses." "The camera caught everything," Rafa added. "Clean evidence. They can't deny what they did." Aunt Vi's expression remained grave. She sat in the chair beside Marcus's bed, taking his hand in hers. Child, men like them don't fear cameras. They fear the ones who use them. What do you mean? Nia asked, though something in Vi's tone made her stomach tighten. Those cameras? Vi shook her head. They only see what certain people want them to see. Been that way since they put up the first traffic light in Harbor View. This is different, Nia insisted. It's not just the footage. People are speaking up. Because of you, Vi said. Because you showed them it's possible to fight back. But baby, that's exactly what makes you dangerous to them. Before Nia could respond, heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway. 2 uniformed officers appeared in the doorway, followed by a tall man in a rumpled suit. His badge hung from a chain around his neck. Sergeant Neil Barrow. Ms. Carter, Barrow said, his voice professionally pleasant. I need to take your statement about tonight's incident. Nia straightened, military training taking over. Of course, Sergeant. Now, hold on. Aunt Vi started to rise, but Nia touched her shoulder. It's okay, Vi. They need to know what happened. She turned to Barrow. Those men were waiting for us. They targeted my brother, specifically. Barrow nodded, pulling out a small notebook. And you responded with considerable force, I understand. I defended myself and my brother from an armed assault. Of course, of course. Barrow's pen scratched across the paper. Several of the other participants are being treated for serious injuries. Broken bones, concussions. They attacked us with chains and bats, Rafa cut in. I treated Marcus myself. They could have killed him. Barrow smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. We'll need your statement as well, Mr. Ortiz. Standard procedure. He turned back to Nia. I want to assure you, Ms. Carter, that justice will be served in this matter. Something in his tone made Nia's combat instincts flare. She met his gaze directly, reading the smug certainty there. This man had already decided what justice meant, and it had nothing to do with protecting Harbor View's residents. The surveillance footage, she said. When can we get a copy? All evidence will be handled through proper channels, Barrow replied smoothly. We wouldn't want anything compromising the investigation. Aunt Vi's fingers tightened around Marcus's hand. Her earlier words echoed in Nia's mind. They don't fear cameras. They fear the ones who use them. Barrow pulled out more forms, his manner all professional courtesy. But his eyes told a different story, one of power, control, and the confidence of a man who knew the system would bend to his will. Sunlight streamed through the hospital window, but it brought no warmth. Nia sat beside Marcus's bed, scrolling through her phone with growing dread. The video had exploded overnight. Millions of views, thousands of shares, each one twisting the truth further. The edited clip started mid-fight, cutting out the gang's initial attack. In this version, Nia appeared from nowhere, a blur of violence against innocent bystanders. The racial slurs were edited out. Marcus's collapse looked staged. Even the lighting had been altered to make the scene darker, more sinister. Comments flooded every post. Look at this crazy woman attacking those guys. Military psycho can't control herself. She's the real threat to our neighborhood. Nia's hands shook as she read. The truth was being buried under an avalanche of lies, and she could feel the noose tightening. Her phone buzzed. Another news alert. Local stations were running with the story. Ex-military woman in violent street brawl. Marcus stirred in his bed, eyes cloudy from pain medication. Nia? What's happening? Before she could answer, heavy footsteps filled the doorway. Sergeant Barrow entered, flanked by 2 officers. His expression was professionally blank, but satisfaction radiated from every pore. Nia Carter, he announced, you're under arrest for aggravated assault and excessive use of force. What? Nia stood, disbelief warring with rage. They attacked us. You saw the surveillance footage. Interesting, you should mention that. Barrow pulled out his phone, showing her the screen. The camera malfunctioned last night. Technical glitch. Happens sometimes in older systems. That's impossible. Dozens of people saw. We have multiple victims with serious injuries, Barrow cut in. And this. He held up an evidence bag containing a tactical knife, its blade glinting. Found at the scene. Military grade. Care to explain? Nia's blood ran cold. She recognized the knife. One of the gang members had pulled it during the fight. But now it was being presented as hers. That's not mine. They brought weapons. They were waiting for us. Marcus? Barrow turned to her brother, his voice dripping concern. Can you tell us what happened before the altercation? Marcus struggled to focus, the concussion and medication clouding his thoughts. We were walking. Everything's fuzzy. He pressed a hand to his bandaged head. Take your time, Barrow said smoothly, though the video seems pretty clear about who started the violence. That video is edited. Nia's military composure cracked. You know it is. Miss Carter, please lower your voice. This is a hospital. Barrow nodded to his officers. Cuff her. Don't touch my sister. Marcus tried to sit up, but pain flashed across his face. Stay still, brother, Nia said, forcing calm into her voice. She held out her wrists, chin high, refusing to give Barrow the satisfaction of resistance. I'll be okay. The cuffs clicked shut. Barrow read her rights with meticulous precision, each word a nail in the coffin of truth. As they led her out, she caught glimpses of hospital staff watching, their faces a mix of fear and judgment. The doctored video had done its work. In the police car, Nia's mind raced. The gang's preparation, the edited footage, the conveniently malfunctioning camera, Barrow's immediate appearance. This was coordinated, professional. Someone with power wanted her brother silenced and her credibility destroyed. At the station, they took her fingerprints and photos. Her military ID drew sneers from the booking officers. Think you're tough, huh? One muttered. Not so special now. They placed her in a holding cell, alone. The concrete walls pressed in, but Nia's thoughts weren't on her confinement. She was piecing together the pattern. Marcus's work at the rec center, keeping kids away from gangs. His scheduled speech at City Hall about neighborhood development. The targeted assault. The manufactured evidence. A legal aid lawyer appeared briefly, looking harried. With the video evidence and victim statements, they're pushing for maximum charges. Bail hearings tomorrow. Those victims were trying to kill my brother, Nia said flatly. That's not how it looks online. The lawyer shuffled papers nervously. Maybe we can argue temporary mental stress, PTSD from your service. No. Nia's voice could have cut steel. I'm not playing into their narrative. I know exactly what I did, and why. The lawyer left, promising to look into options. Nia stood at the cell bars, watching the station bustle. Officers avoided her gaze. Phones buzzed with social media alerts. Her face was everywhere, branded as a violent aggressor. Through the window, she could see Harbor View's streets, her neighborhood, her home, the place Marcus had dedicated his life to protecting. Now, they were both being painted as threats to the very community they served. In the quiet of her cell, Nia whispered the truth she'd realized. They knew who I was. This isn't random. Her voice hardened with certainty. This is war. The words hung in the air, a soldier's promise. Her SEAL training had taught her to recognize coordinated attacks, to see through deception, to understand when a firefight was really part of a larger battle. This wasn't about one night or one fight. This was about power, control, and who got to decide Harbor View's future. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Aunt Vi's front porch as Nia climbed the worn steps. Her shoulders ached from the hard jail cot, but the pain was nothing compared to the anger burning in her chest. The church bells rang in the distance, a sound that usually brought peace to Harborview, but today felt like a warning. Aunt Vi opened the door before Nia could knock. Her face, usually warm with welcome, was etched with worry lines. "Get in here, child," she said, pulling Nia inside. The house smelled of fresh cornbread and coffee, Vi's way of providing comfort in crisis. "How's Marcus?" Nia asked, following Vi to the kitchen. "Stable. Doctor says the concussion's serious, but he's tough." Vi poured 2 cups of coffee, her hands steady despite her obvious distress. "Like his sister." Nia accepted the cup, but couldn't drink. "They're saying I started it, that I'm unstable, dangerous. Baby, they've been saying things about us since before you were born." Vi's voice hardened. "But this time, it's not just talk. This is calculated." She walked to a drawer and pulled out a thick manila folder. "While you were locked up, I made some calls. Talked to people who remember things others want forgotten." Vi spread papers across the kitchen table. Zoning notices, development permits, city council minutes. And at the center, a glossy flyer that made Nia's blood boil. Dre King Mather, the gang leader, standing shoulder to shoulder with Councilman Roy Halverson at a community renewal rally. Marcus was gathering testimony, Vi explained, tapping the documents. All these longtime residents being pushed out, mysterious fires in old buildings, gang activity spiking whenever someone speaks up. He was building a case to present at City Hall next week. Nia's hand tightened around her coffee cup. The attack wasn't random. Far from it. Vi pulled out more papers. "Look at these property records. Every time Dre's crew terrorizes a block, developers swoop in to buy. And guess who's on the zoning board approving every sale?" "Halverson," Nia growled. "That man's been selling Harborview piece by piece." Vi's voice trembled with rage, using thugs to clear the way, then calling it urban renewal. Marcus was about to expose it all. Nia studied the flyer. Halverson's smile was practiced, political. But Dre's grin was predatory. A wolf in designer clothes. They're working together. The gang creates fear, drives people out. Then Halverson's developer friends buy up everything cheap, Vi finished. Been happening all over the city. But Harborview was fighting back. Thanks to Marcus. And now they're trying to silence him. Nia stood, pacing the kitchen. "Frame me to discredit us both. They underestimated you, though." Vi's eyes sparked with pride. "Thought you were just another victim they could scare off. Didn't know they were picking a fight with a seal. Doesn't matter what I am if they control the story." Nia gestured at her phone. "That video is a lie," Vi cut in. "And lies can be exposed." She walked to her living room window, gesturing at the neighborhood beyond. "Look out there. Every porch, every stoop. Those are our people. They know Marcus. Know what he stands for. What you both stand for." Nia joined her at the window. The street was quiet, but she could feel the tension in the air. More gang tags had appeared overnight. Windows were boarded up. Fear was doing its work. "They won't stop with Marcus," Vi said softly. "Won't stop until Harborview is broken. Until we forget who we are. I won't let that happen." Nia's voice was steel. "Marcus dedicated his life to this place, to these kids. I won't let them erase that." Vi touched her arm. "You've got training they don't expect, but they've got money, power, connections. This isn't a fight you can win with fists alone. Then I'll fight it every way I can." Nia gathered the documents, memorizing names and dates. If they want to play with paperwork and propaganda, fine. But they should have thought twice before putting their hands on my brother. Through the window, smoke rose from somewhere in the distance. Another accidental fire clearing the way for development. The sight of it against the darkening sky made Nia's jaw clench. Marcus always said Harborview was worth fighting for. Vi murmured. Worth dying for if it came to that. It won't, Nia said firmly. I didn't survive 3 tours just to watch criminals in suits destroy my home. She stared at the burned skyline, at the neighborhood fighting for its soul. The same streets where Marcus taught kids to dribble basketballs instead of running drugs. Where Vi's church fed families when jobs disappeared. Where generations had built something worth protecting. If they want a war, Nia said, her voice cold and certain, they've picked the wrong damn soldier. The church basement smelled of old hymnals and coffee as Nia stood before 20 nervous faces. Folding chairs creaked. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. These weren't soldiers. They were shop owners, grandmothers, teenagers who'd grown up on these streets. But the determination in their eyes matched any unit she'd served with. First rule, Nia said, holding up her phone, is distance and documentation. You see trouble. You record from a safe spot. No heroes. She looked directly at a teenage boy who'd been bragging earlier about confronting gang members. Your job is to gather evidence, not engage. Mrs. Johnson, who ran the corner store, raised a trembling hand. But what if they see us filming? That's why we work in pairs. Nia gestured to Marcus, who stood by the wall despite his bruised ribs. One films while the other watches their back. And we're going to practice exactly how to do it safely. She divided them into groups, demonstrating proper angles for recording license plates, faces, and suspicious activity. Hold your phone like this. Landscape mode, steady hands. And always have your backup partner watching the surroundings. Aunt Vi's choir members, most over 60, practiced with shaky fingers but fierce focus. These women had sung through riots and recessions. Now, they learned to archive videos to secure cloud storage, their voices soft but determined as they repeated the steps. Remember, Nia emphasized, evidence only matters if it survives. Every video gets backed up instantly. She showed them apps that would automatically upload footage even if their phones were grabbed or broken. 3 copies minimum, your phone, the cloud, and shared with our secure group. Marcus limped between the groups, offering gentle corrections and encouragement. His face still bore fading bruises, but his voice carried the same steady strength that had guided countless kids on the basketball court. Don't forget to narrate what you're seeing, he reminded them. Time, date, location. Speak it clearly while recording. A younger woman, Teresa from the daycare center, practiced filming while describing suspicious activity. 2 men in dark hoodies, north side of Marshall Street. Thursday, 7:15 p.m., walking toward the Williams building. Her voice gained confidence with each detail. Good, Nia nodded. Details matter. The more specific your documentation, the harder it is for them to deny what's happening. She moved through the room, adjusting grips and angles, showing how to film discreetly from windows or doorways. These weren't combat techniques, but they were just as vital for survival. Every recorded threat, every documented act of intimidation, was another piece of armor for their neighborhood. You're not just protecting yourselves, she told them. You're protecting Harborview's history, its future. In the corner, Marcus helped organize a schedule for elder escorts, volunteers to accompany seniors to stores, church, and doctor's appointments. Despite his injuries, he insisted on taking shifts himself. We move in groups now, he said. No one walks alone. Nia watched him with a mixture of pride and worry. The attack had shaken him, but hadn't broken his spirit. If anything, it had strengthened his resolve to fight back, not with fists, but with organization and unity. What about when they threaten us? Someone asked. They keep saying they know where we live. That's why we document everything, Nia replied. Every threat, every intimidation attempt. Build the pattern. Show how systematic this is. She demonstrated a simple de-escalation technique. Step back, Stay calm. Keep recording. Your footage is your weapon. The group practiced exit strategies, safe words, quick ways to alert the network if trouble started. Nia had them memorize key phone numbers and rally points. It wasn't tactical training, but it was community defense, something just as powerful in its own way. Remember, she said, they want us scared and isolated. That's how they win. But we're stronger together. Aunt Vi's voice rose from where she was helping elderly members practice with their phones. Been singing together 40 years. Now we're filming together too. Let them try to stop us. The determination in the room was palpable. These people had watched their neighborhood slowly poisoned by fear. Now they were learning to fight back, not with violence, but with visibility and solidarity. Marcus spoke up from his corner. Every time they push, we document. Every threat, every act of vandalism, every accident that drives people out. We build the evidence they can't ignore. Nia moved to the old chalkboard at the front of the room. The surface was worn from years of Sunday school lessons, but the chalk still wrote clear and white as she spelled out 2 words: Harbor Watch. The room fell quiet, watching her. That's who we are now, she said, underlining the words. Eyes and ears for our community. Watching, documenting, protecting. Not with fists or weapons, but with truth. She looked at the faces before her. Shopkeepers, grandmothers, teenagers, choir members. Not soldiers, but defenders in their own right. Each one learning to stand a little taller, to look fear in the eye, and hold up a phone instead of backing down. Harbor Watch, Marcus repeated softly. Others echoed it, the words spreading through the basement like a prayer. Nia stepped back from the chalkboard, those 2 simple words gleaming in the fluorescent light. She wasn't building an army. She was building resistance, teaching her community to fight back with facts instead of force, to shine light into every dark corner where corruption tried to hide. Again, she said, let's practice one more time. Show me how you'll document what's happening to our home. The evening sun cast long shadows through the rec center windows as Nia watched Marcus sort through paperwork at his desk. His bruises had faded to yellow, but exhaustion still lined his face. The sound of squeaking sneakers echoed from the gym where Coach Tony, Marcus's assistant of 3 years, ran drills with the youth team. You should be resting, Nia said, leaning against the doorframe. Marcus managed a tired smile. Can't. Got to figure out how we're keeping the lights on with all these safety inspections they keep throwing at us. A commotion from outside drew their attention. Through the office window, they saw 3 of Dre's men lounging by a black SUV in the parking lot. But what made Nia's blood run cold was the sight of Coach Tony walking toward them, looking nervously over his shoulder. What's he doing? Marcus stood, confusion clouding his features. They watched as Tony reached the SUV. Money changed hands. Thick envelopes passed between tinted windows. Tony's shoulders hunched as he stuffed something into his jacket. No, Marcus whispered. He wouldn't. But Nia was already moving. She slipped out the side door, using the shadows of the building for cover. Years of SEAL training made her footsteps silent as she circled behind the SUV. Schedule's the same, she heard Tony say. They always walk through the lot after closing on Thursdays. Marcus trusts me with all the routines. Marcus appeared at the rec center door, his face ashen. Tony? The assistant coach spun around, dropping papers that scattered in the evening breeze. Nia snatched one before it could blow away. It was a printed schedule, Marcus's daily routines, carefully annotated with times and routes. The SUV peeled out, leaving Tony standing alone as Marcus limped toward him. How long? Marcus asked, his voice cracking. How long have you been selling us out? Tony's facade crumpled. Marcus, you don't understand. They offered me a position, real money, benefits. When the new development goes up, I'll be running their corporate wellness center. You set us up. Nia's voice was ice. That night in the lot, you told them exactly when we'd be there. They said they'd just scare you off, Tony protested. Nobody was supposed to get hurt. But you need to face facts. This neighborhood is changing. Either get on board or get out of the way. Marcus staggered like he'd been hit again. Those kids in there trust you. Their parents trust you. I trusted you. And what do I have to show for it? Tony shot back. A part-time coaching job? Food bank groceries? The world's moving on, Marcus. This place is dead. They're just making it official. Nia stepped forward, but Marcus held up a hand. How much? He asked quietly. How much was my life worth? Tony couldn't meet his eyes. $5,000, plus the promise of the new job. Get out. Marcus's voice shook. Get out before I forget everything I ever taught those kids about controlling their anger. They watched Tony hurry to his car, start it with shaking hands, and drive away. The gym had gone quiet. The kids pressed against the windows, watching their assistant coach abandon them. Inside Marcus's office, he sank into his chair, head in his hands. The betrayal seemed to physically weigh on him, bending his shoulders. 3 years, he muttered. 3 years he worked beside me, ate at my table, knew my family. This isn't on you, Nia said firmly. I brought him in, trusted him with everything, schedules, keys, access to the kids. His voice broke. God, he could have gotten us killed. Nia pulled up a chair, forcing him to look at her. Listen to me. This isn't about your judgment. This is about a system that turns neighbors against each other. That makes people think selling out their community is the only way to survive. I should have seen it. No. Nia's voice was steel. This is exactly what they want. For us to blame ourselves instead of them. Tony's betrayal isn't proof of your failure. It's proof of how deep this rot goes, how desperately we need to fight it. Marcus stared at the scattered papers on his desk. Schedules, budgets, permission slips from parents who trusted him with their children's futures. Maybe Tony's right. Maybe we're just delaying the inevitable. Look at me. Nia grabbed his hand. Remember what Mom used to say? The only thing evil needs to win is for good people to give up. A ghost of a smile touched Marcus's lips. She'd be proud of you, you know. Coming back here, fighting for this place. She'd be proud of both of us, Nia corrected. And she'd tell us this is exactly why they're targeting you. Because you give people hope. Show them they don't have to accept what's being forced on them. Through the window, they could see the kids in the gym, still running drills despite their coach's absence. Still believing in what this place stood for. They thought hurting you would break this community's spirit, Nia continued. They thought buying Tony would prove everyone has a price. But they're wrong. Every betrayal just shows us who's really committed to the fight. Marcus squeezed her hand, his voice barely a whisper. Then, we fight back together. The community center buzzed with tension as people packed every available seat. Folding chairs lined the walls, and still more residents stood shoulder to shoulder in the back. The air conditioning struggled against the heat of so many bodies, but no one seemed to mind. They were here for justice. Aunt Vi sat in the front row, her Sunday best pressed and perfect, nodding encouragement to Nia, who stood by the projector. Marcus sat beside Vi, his healing face a reminder of what was at stake. Thank you all for coming, Nia began, her voice steady. For weeks, we've been told what happened that night in the lot. Been shown edited clips making us look like criminals. But today, you'll see the truth. She clicked the remote. The massive screen flickered to life, showing crystal-clear footage from the city's surveillance camera. The timestamp was unmistakable. The audience watched in stunned silence as trucks blocked the lot's exits. They saw Dre King Mather step out, his gold chains catching streetlight. His face was clearly visible as he directed his men to surround Marcus and Nia. Someone in the crowd gasped when the first racial slur rang out. The unedited audio captured every hateful word, every threat about cleaning up the neighborhood. "That's my son they're threatening," a woman shouted, pointing at one of Dre's lieutenants. "He coaches Little League." The footage continued, showing the brutal attack. But now everyone could see what really happened. How Nia only fought back after Marcus was struck. How she used minimal force to protect them both. The camera caught everything, including Dre filming with his phone, laughing as he created the edited version that would frame Nia. Then came the damning evidence: Sergeant Barrow's arrival at the scene. The body camera footage showed him greeting Dre by name, friendly and familiar. They watched him coach the gang members on what to say in their statements. "This is a clear civil rights violation," a voice called out. A woman in a crisp suit stood up. "I'm Sarah Chen from the Equal Justice Initiative. We'd like to take your case, pro bono. This kind of selective policing, the coordination with known criminals, it's textbook discrimination." The crowd erupted in cheers. Marcus squeezed Nia's hand as phones lit up across the room. People were sharing the truth, spreading it faster than any cover-up could contain. Reverend Wallace, his deep voice cutting through the noise, stood up. "I'm pledging $5,000 from our church fund to support the Carters' legal defense." "The Latino Business Association matches that pledge," shouted Mr. Ortiz from his corner store. "Harbor View Youth Sports will contribute." The pledges kept coming. People were opening their wallets, writing checks on the spot. Aunt Vi's eyes glistened as she watched her community unite. At the back of the hall, Councilman Halverson shifted uncomfortably in his expensive suit. He'd arrived late, probably expecting to witness another neighborhood squabble he could dismiss. Instead, he watched his carefully constructed narrative crumble. Nia continued, her voice stronger. "This isn't just about one attack. This is about systematic harassment, about forcing families from their homes through intimidation and false arrests." She clicked to the next slide. Photographs of Dre meeting with developers, construction permits signed by Halverson himself, police reports showing the stark difference in response times between Harbor View and wealthier neighborhoods. "They thought we wouldn't fight back," Marcus said, standing despite his lingering injuries. "Thought we'd run when they sent their thugs." But Harbor View isn't just buildings. It's people. It's history. It's home. The applause was deafening. People were hugging, crying, pulling out phones to donate what they could. The energy in the room had transformed from anger to determination, from fear to hope. A news crew that had been filming from the corner was already broadcasting live. Their crawler read, "Exclusive: Police corruption and gang collusion exposed in Harbor View development scandal." Sarah Chen was moving through the crowd, collecting statements, building their case. "With this evidence," she announced, "we can file for an immediate injunction against the development project. We can demand a federal investigation into civil rights violations." At the back of the hall, Councilman Halverson's face had gone from politician pale to ghostly white. His carefully manicured hands shook as he reached for his phone. Dre stood beside him, his usual swagger replaced by barely contained rage as he watched his empire of fear collapse. "Handle this," Halverson whispered to Dre, his practiced smile cracking at the edges. "Handle it now." The church hall's stained glass windows shattered in the heat, spraying colored shards across the sidewalk. Orange flames reached toward the night sky as thick black smoke billowed upward. The fire truck's red lights painted the gathered crowd in pulses of crimson. Nia stood with her Harbor Watch Patrol members, their faces streaked with tears as they watched their headquarters burn. The basement where they'd trained, the tables where they'd planned their neighborhood defense, all of it disappearing into the inferno. "My grandmother helped paint those windows," whispered Mrs. Jackson, one of their eldest patrol members. Her phone shook in her weathered hands as she recorded the destruction. 50 years of history. Just gone. Firefighters battled the blaze, but the old wooden building was already lost. Water from their hoses turned to steam before it could douse the flames. The heat was so intense that the crowd had to keep stepping back as the fire department set up a larger perimeter. Sergeant Barrow stood off to the side, making a show of taking notes. His face flickered with poorly hidden satisfaction as he spoke into his radio. Probable arson. Could be gang-related. Or maybe retaliation from those militant neighborhood watch types. Nia's fists clenched at his words, but she kept her voice steady. "You know exactly who did this." "Careful, Carter," Barrow smirked. "Accusations like that could be considered threatening an officer." As dawn broke over Harbor View, the fire had finally died down to smoldering ruins. The air still reeked of smoke and ash. Nia's phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. 911, cops at Reese Center, come quick. She arrived to find police cars surrounding the youth center. Officers were leading Marcus out in handcuffs while news cameras rolled. Sergeant Barrow held up an evidence bag containing white powder. "Anonymous tip led us to check his office," Barrow announced to the reporters. "Found this stash of narcotics in the desk where he counsels kids. Really makes you wonder about his whole community leader act." Marcus's face was a mask of disbelief. "That's not mine. I've never seen that before." His eyes met Nia's. They both knew. This was payback for the town hall. By noon, the story was everywhere. Local news channels ran the footage of Marcus's arrest on repeat. Social media exploded with manufactured outrage. Comment sections filled with racist accusations about thugs pretending to be role models and violent militants destroying the neighborhood. A viral video showed carefully selected clips of Nia's SEAL combat training, set to ominous music. The caption read, "The real face of Harbor Watch. Trained killer leads militant group terrorizing development project." Outside the burned church, Aunt Vi stood in her Sunday dress, spine straight despite her grief. Ashes drifted like gray snow around her feet. The acrid smell of burned wood and melted plastic hung heavy in the air. "First, they tried to buy us out," she said quietly. "Then they tried to scare us out. Now they're burning us out and poisoning our names." She touched the blackened cornerstone, her fingers coming away covered in soot. "They've declared open war." The crowd of community members gathered behind her grew larger. Parents who'd trusted Marcus with their children for years. Elders who'd worshipped in the church hall for decades. Young people who'd found purpose in Harbor Watch's patrols. Mrs. Jackson held up her phone, still recording. "We need to show the world what they're doing to us. They'll just twist it again," someone said bitterly. "Like they did with the fight footage. Then we'll keep recording until the truth can't be denied," Mrs. Jackson insisted. "Every burnt building, every false arrest, every lie they tell about us. We document it all." Nia surveyed the devastation. The church hall had been more than their headquarters. It was the heart of Harbor View. Generations had gathered here for weddings, funerals, community meetings. Now it was a smoking ruin, and her brother was in jail on fake charges. Rafa arrived with his EMT kit, checking residents for smoke inhalation. "This is getting dangerous, Nia," he murmured as he worked. "They're escalating. Next time, it might not be an empty building they torch." "We knew they'd fight dirty once we exposed them," Nia replied, watching as more news vans pulled up to film the destruction. "But we can't back down now. Harborview is our home. The morning sun climbed higher, illuminating the full scope of the damage. The church hall's roof had collapsed entirely. Charred hymnals and melted chairs littered the ground. The Harbor Watch headquarters sign hung crooked and scorched, a bitter testament to what they'd lost. But as Nia looked at the determined faces around her, she saw something the arsonists hadn't counted on. Each act of destruction, each false accusation, only strengthened their resolve. The community wasn't running. They were getting angry. The vigil began at sunset. Hundreds of Harborview residents gathered in front of the burned church hall, holding candles that pushed back the growing darkness. Their flames formed a river of light down the block, a defiant answer to the arson that had tried to break their spirit. Marcus stood at the front, his face still bruised, but his voice strong as he led the crowd in, "We shall overcome." The false drug charges hadn't stuck. The community had rallied to post his bail within hours. Now he represented everything the developers feared: unity, resilience, hope. Nia scanned the crowd from her position near the church steps, watching for threats. The peaceful gathering made her uneasy. Too many people packed together, too many blind spots between the buildings. Her SEAL training screamed that this was the perfect setup for an attack. A police cruiser rolled by slowly, Sergeant Barrow at the wheel. He locked eyes with Nia and smiled. That smile sent ice through her veins. The first sign of trouble came when several unmarked vans turned onto the street, engines growling. Before Nia could react, they accelerated toward the crowd. People scattered, candles falling to the pavement. The vans boxed in the gathering from three sides. Doors burst open. Men in dark hoodies poured out, wielding bats and chains. Dre King Mather emerged last, his gold chains glinting in the streetlights. "Touching ceremony," he called out, his voice dripping with mock sympathy. "But Harborview's future can't wait for your little protests." Nia pushed through the panicked crowd, trying to reach Marcus. But police cars suddenly appeared, sirens wailing, cutting her off. Officers jumped out with weapons drawn, all pointing at the vigil participants, none at Dre's men. "Everyone on the ground!" Barrow shouted through a megaphone. "This is an illegal assembly!" In the chaos, Dre's gang moved with practiced precision. 3 men grabbed Marcus, landing quick blows to his kidneys before he could fight back. They dragged him toward the nearest van as he struggled. "Nia!" Marcus's cry cut through the noise. She launched forward, but strong hands seized her arms. 2 officers twisted them behind her back, slamming her face first into a patrol car. "Nia Carter," Barrow's voice oozed satisfaction, "you're under arrest for inciting a riot and violating your bail conditions." "He's lying," she shouted to the crowd. "Film everything!" Through the police car window, she watched helplessly as Marcus was thrown into the van. His eyes met hers for one desperate moment before the door slammed shut. The van peeled away, leaving black tire marks on the asphalt. Phones recorded everything, but Nia knew it wouldn't matter. They'd edit the footage, twist the narrative, make the victims look like criminals, just like they had with the lot attack. The ride to the station passed in a blur of rage and fear. They put her in a holding cell deep in the building's basement, far from windows or activity. The message was clear. No one would witness whatever happened next. Hours crawled by. The concrete bench offered no comfort. Every minute that passed was another minute Marcus spent in his captor's hands. She paced the small cell, mind racing through scenarios, trying to guess where they'd taken him. Near midnight, 2 pairs of footsteps approached. Barrow appeared with a man Nia recognized from news coverage. Councilman Halverson, the developer's pet politician. "Quite a mess you've made, Ms." "Carter," Halverson said, straightening his expensive tie. "All this violence, all this unrest, it's exactly why Harborview needs urban renewal. You mean ethnic cleansing, Nia spat. Forcing out black families so you can build luxury condos? Progress requires sacrifice. He checked his watch. The demolition crews arrive next week. The permits are signed, the machines are ready. All these protests accomplish nothing except putting people like your brother in danger. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Marcus was their leverage, their way of ensuring the community's submission. Where is he? Nia's voice was deadly quiet. Safe? Barrow smirked. For now, assuming everyone cooperates with the relocation orders. You're going to fail, Nia said. Harborview won't break. Such spirit? Halverson sighed. But what spirit against bulldozers? Against progress? Against the full force of law and order? He gestured to Barrow. The world's changing, Miss Carter. The only question is whether your people change with it or get crushed beneath it. They left her alone with those words, their footsteps echoing away into silence. The basement's fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows through the bars. Nia stood at the cell door, hands gripping the cold metal. Her brother was out there somewhere, held by men who saw violence as a business tool. The same men who'd burned their church, planted drugs, twisted truth into lies, all to erase a community that had stood for generations. Hold on, Marcus, she whispered into the darkness. I'm coming. The words felt inadequate against the weight of what they faced. But they were all she had in that concrete box, that manufactured cage meant to contain not just her body, but the community's will to resist. They thought isolation would break her spirit. They didn't understand that Navy SEALs were built for exactly these moments, when all seemed lost, when the odds were impossible, when failure meant death. She remembered Marcus teaching kids at the rec center, showing them how to stand tall even when the world tried to make them small. She thought of Aunt Vi in front of the burned church, unbowed by the destruction. She recalled Mrs. Jackson recording everything, ensuring their truth survived even when their buildings didn't. The fluorescent light flickered, shadows dancing across the cell walls. Somewhere in Harborview, demolition machines were being readied. Somewhere, her brother waited, trusting she would come. Somewhere, Dre and his masters celebrated their apparent victory. Dawn crept over Harborview, painting the projects in shades of gray. Aunt Vi knelt in her small garden, pulling weeds with hands that had worked this soil for 40 years. A shadow fell across the tomato plants. Ma'am! A young officer stood at her fence, nervous energy radiating from his pressed uniform. I'm Officer Chen. I have something you need to see. Vi straightened slowly, studying him. He couldn't have been more than 25, probably fresh from the academy. His eyes darted around, checking for witnesses. Come inside, child, she said, recognizing the fear in his movements. No cameras in my kitchen. At her worn table, Officer Chen pulled out a small thumb drive. His hands shook slightly as he placed it between them. It's Sergeant Barrow's body cam footage, he whispered. From the past 3 months. He doesn't know I copied it. But what they're doing, it's wrong. All of it. Vi's weathered fingers closed around the drive. You're risking everything bringing this to me. My father came here from China with nothing, Chen said. Worked at the docks for 30 years. These developers, these gangs, they're destroying communities just like the ones that gave my family a chance. I took this badge to protect people, not help crush them. Vi made him tea, listened to him detail what was on the drive. Barrow meeting with Dre, coordinating arrests, planning the church fire. Hours of corruption captured in high definition. Get this to my niece, Vi said. She'll know what to do. An hour later, Vi walked into the police station, straight to the front desk. Her church choir followed, filling the lobby with their presence. They began to sing. Old spirituals that echoed off the walls, voices raised in harmony that demanded attention. While the desk officers tried to control the situation, Officer Chen slipped down to the holding cells. The key turned quietly in Nia's lock. "Your aunt sent me," he whispered, pressing the thumb drive into her palm. "Everything's on here. Barrow's whole operation." Nia's fingers closed around the small device, a digital key that could unlock justice. "Thank you," she said softly. "Now, get out of here before they connect you to this." She emerged from the basement to find the station in beautiful chaos. The choir's voices filled every corner, making it impossible for the officers to coordinate. Vi stood at the center, conducting with raised hands, her face serene. "You can't hold my niece without charges," Vi announced between verses. "Not while we're here witnessing." Barrow appeared, face red with fury. But with 30 pairs of eyes recording on phones, he couldn't risk making a scene. "Release her," he growled to the booking officer. "But this isn't over." "No," Nia said as she walked out, the thumb drive burning in her pocket. "It's just beginning." She found Rafa waiting in his ambulance around the corner. His medical bag was packed with extra supplies, bandages, splints, everything they might need. But more importantly, he had his laptop and a mobile hotspot. "I've got signal boosters," he said, pulling out equipment. "Whatever we stream, it'll go out clear and strong. No way they can shut it down." They drove to Aunt Vi's house, where Nia quickly reviewed the footage. Hours of damning evidence played across the screen. Barrow and Dre planning the ambush in the lot, coordinating the church fire, discussing their plans to frame Marcus. The councilman appeared in several clips, handing over envelopes of cash. "We need to hit them where they're strongest," Nia said, plugging the drive into Rafa's laptop. "Right in their own territory, where they think they're untouchable." "The warehouse district," Rafa nodded. "That's where they took Marcus. My cousin works security there. Says Dre's been running operations from the old cement factory." Nia pulled up satellite maps on her phone, studying approaches and exits. Her SEAL training kicked in, analyzing angles, cover, tactical advantages. The factory was their fortress, but every fortress had weaknesses. "We'll need a distraction," she said. "Something to draw attention while we get into position." Vi smiled. "Leave that to us. My choir's ready to take our songs right to their doorstep. Let them try to explain attacking elderly church ladies on camera." Nia changed into dark tactical gear, strapping on a protective vest under her jacket. She checked her non-lethal equipment: zip ties, smoke canisters, flashbangs legally purchased for training purposes. Everything designed to disable without permanent harm. "The live stream goes up the moment we arrive," Rafa said, testing the connection. "Multiple angles, backed up to secure servers. Whatever happens, the whole world will see it in real time." "Good." Nia's voice was steady as steel. "Dre and his masters love putting on shows. Let's give them an audience they can't control." She thought of Marcus, probably beaten and bound in that warehouse. Thought of their community, living under the shadow of corruption and violence. Thought of all the lies that had been used to paint them as criminals in their own home. The sun was setting as they loaded the last of the gear. Vi's choir members were already gathering, their voices warming up with hymns of freedom and justice. Phones and cameras were charged, ready to document everything. "You're sure about this?" Rafa asked quietly. "Once we start streaming, there's no going back. They'll have to respond with everything they've got." Nia checked her equipment one final time, movements precise and controlled. Each piece had its purpose, each action part of a larger plan. Just like her SEAL operations, but this time she was fighting for her family, her home, her people's right to exist, without fear. "This time, no one walks away clean," she said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. Industrial floodlights cast harsh shadows across the construction yard, turning everything into stark blacks and blinding whites. Marcus slumped in a metal chair at the center, ropes cutting into his arms and chest. Blood trickled from his split lip, but his eyes burned with defiance. Dre's men circled him like vultures, taking turns shoving the chair and laughing. Their phones recorded everything, streaming Marcus's humiliation live to their followers. Construction equipment loomed in the background, cranes and bulldozers waiting to tear down Harbor View. "Your sister ain't coming," one thug taunted, yanking Marcus's head back by the hair. "She's locked up tight where she belongs." "Maybe we should send her pieces of you," another suggested, flicking open a knife. "Show her what happens when—" A figure stepped into the light. Nia stood alone at the yard's entrance, wearing simple dark clothes, no visible weapons. Her stance was relaxed, but perfectly balanced, the way a tiger looks casual before it strikes. Laughter erupted from the gang. They nudged each other, pointing and recording. "Look what we got here! Little girl trying to play hero. What you gonna do, sweetheart? Call the cops? Nah, she too stupid to be scared. Guess we gotta teach her proper." Nia's eyes swept the scene with military precision, cataloging threats and positions. 20 men, various weapons, Marcus at center. Multiple angles of attack. Poor cover except for the construction materials. "Last chance," she called out, voice carrying across the yard. "Let him go, and you all get to walk away." The gang howled with mockery. One of them swaggered forward, swinging a length of chain. "What's a little black girl gonna do against all of us?" He snapped the chain for emphasis. "You ain't got no gun, no backup. Just you and your big mouth." Nia's hand shot out, grabbing a steel rod from nearby scaffolding. In one fluid motion, she yanked it free and spun it to test its weight. The movement was so swift, so practiced, several thugs stepped back. "Wrong," she said softly. "I've got training you can't imagine." The chain wielder charged. His weapon whistled through the air, but met only empty space as Nia slipped aside. The steel rod flashed, catching him behind the knee. Bone cracked. He went down screaming. 2 more rushed her with baseball bats. Nia moved like water between them, the rod becoming a blur. One bat splintered. An elbow strike crushed a nose. A sweep took out legs. In seconds, both attackers lay groaning. The remaining gang members spread out, suddenly wary. This wasn't the easy victim they'd expected. The way she moved, the precision of her strikes. This was something else entirely. "She fights like military," someone shouted. Dre pushed through his men, face twisted with rage. "She's a damn SEAL, a Navy SEAL fighter." Shock rippled through the group. Phone cameras lowered as reality sank in. They'd expected to terrorize a civilian. Instead, they'd walked into a trap. Nia advanced, each step measured and deadly. The rod hummed as she spun it, creating a defensive circle. 3 more thugs tested her guard. 3 more hit the ground, clutching broken limbs. "You trained with knives?" she asked conversationally, ducking a wild swing. "I trained with SEAL Team 6. The rod cracked against a kneecap. "You learned to fight in alleys?" She disarmed a knife wielder with surgical precision. "I learned in war zones." Blood spattered concrete as she systematically dismantled their attacks. Every move was controlled, calculated to disable without killing. The yard filled with the sounds of combat. Impact of metal on bone, grunts of pain, bodies hitting ground. Marcus watched in awe as his sister moved through Dre's men like a force of nature. The sister who'd carried him to safety that first night was now dealing out justice with terrifying skill. Yet even now she showed restraint, breaking bones instead of necks, choosing pain over death. Dre backed toward Marcus, eyes wild with desperation. His carefully crafted image of untouchable power was crumbling. Live streams caught every second of his men falling to a single opponent. "Finish her!" he screamed, pressing a knife to Marcus's throat. "I said finish her now!" The remaining gang members hesitated, looking between their leader and the SEAL who'd dropped half their crew in minutes. Fear warred with pride on their faces. Naya paused, rod held ready, blood dripping from one end. Her breath was steady, her stance unchanged. She could do this all night. "Your choice," she told the wavering thugs. "But ask yourselves, how many bones you willing to lose for him?" The moment stretched taut as a wire. Marcus felt the knife trembling against his skin. Dre's desperation rolled off him in waves as his authority crumbled in real time. Then the floodlights caught movement on the warehouse roof, dark figures taking position. Reinforcements had arrived. The fight was about to enter a new phase. "Kill her!" Dre shrieked, pressing the blade harder. "Kill this Blood and rain mixed on the concrete as Nia spun into action. She vaulted over a charging attacker, using his momentum to send him sprawling. Her path to Marcus was clear for a precious second. The steel rod whirred through the air, striking Dre's knife hand with surgical precision. He howled, the blade clattering away. "Marcus, roll!" Nia shouted, already moving. Her brother didn't hesitate. He threw his weight sideways, chair and all, just as Nia's boot connected with Dre's chest. The gang leader stumbled back, giving her the space she needed. The rod became a blur as she sliced through Marcus's ropes with controlled strikes, never breaking her defensive stance. Marcus staggered to his feet, shaking out his arms. Blood ran down his face, but his eyes were clear and focused. He snatched up a fallen baseball bat, spinning to stand back to back with his sister. "Just like basketball," Nia said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Read their movement, anticipate, redirect." "Got it," Marcus growled. "Time for some payback." They moved as one unit. When a thug rushed Marcus with a chain, Nia dropped low, sweeping his legs while Marcus swung high. The bat connected with a meaty thunk. Another attacker tried to flank them, but the siblings pivoted in perfect sync. Marcus going wide to force him back, Nia striking precise and brutal at the exposed knee. "Feel their energy," Nia called out, demonstrating as she caught a punch and used the attacker's own force to slam him into the ground. "Don't fight it, guide it." Marcus was a quick study. When the next gang member charged, he shifted just enough to let the momentum carry past him. The bat became an extension of the movement, adding to the thug's speed until he crashed into a stack of pallets. "There you go." Nia's pride was evident even as she disabled another attacker. "Natural talent." They fell into a deadly rhythm. Marcus's height and reach complemented Nia's speed and precision. Where he created space with powerful swings, she darted in to strike vulnerable points. When attackers tried to overwhelm them with numbers, the siblings moved like dancers, trading places and targets with fluid grace. Two thugs rushed them simultaneously. Marcus and Nia stepped apart, then back together, trapping their opponents between them. Marcus's bat swept low as Nia's rod struck high. The gang members collapsed in a groaning heap. "Watch this move," Nia said, catching another attacker's wild haymaker. She guided his punch past her, adding a slight twist that sent him spinning. "Redirect. Don't absorb." Marcus mirrored her technique moments later when a knife-wielder lunged at him. He slipped aside just as Nia had shown him, letting the attack flow past while adding his own force to the equation. The thug sprawled face first into the concrete. Blood ran from Marcus's split lip, and Nia's knuckles were raw, but they maintained their position. The remaining gang members circled warily, their earlier mockery replaced by genuine fear. They'd expected to overpower a single SEAL. Instead, they faced a brother-sister combat unit moving with devastating efficiency. Dre's face contorted with rage, as he watched his crew being systematically dismantled. He snatched up his fallen knife and charged the siblings with a roar of desperate fury. Nia met his rush with mechanical precision. The steel rod deflected his wild slash, then cracked across his wrist. The knife fell again, but this time Nia kept moving. She hooked the rod behind his neck and twisted, forcing him into a brutal chokehold. "Now, Marcus!" she shouted, controlling Dre's thrashing body. Marcus stepped in, bat held high. Recognition flickered in Dre's eyes. The man he'd tried to silence was about to deliver justice. The bat swung in a perfect arc, connecting with Dre's jaw. The gang leader went limp in Nia's hold. She let him crumple to the concrete, unconscious but breathing. The remaining thugs backed away, phones lowered, their live streams capturing their leader's complete humiliation. Through the sudden silence, police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder by the second. Marcus and Nia shared a look, both knowing what those sirens might mean. Barrow and his corrupt officers could be coming to finish what Dre had started. Nia's hands tightened on the bloodied steel rod. Her stance shifted subtly, preparing for yet another fight. Marcus moved closer, bat ready, his shoulder brushing hers. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The sirens grew deafening now, multiple units converging on the construction yard. Red and blue lights began to strobe across the walls. Nia's muscles coiled with tension as she tracked the approaching sound. She'd fought through Dre's entire crew to save her brother. She'd proven that their bond was stronger than any gang's intimidation. But now, facing the possibility of corrupt police response, Nia knew the night's real battle might just be beginning. Marcus wiped blood from his chin, never taking his eyes off the yard entrance. "Whatever happens," he said quietly, "we fight as family." Nia nodded, her breathing controlled and steady. The sirens reached a crescendo as the first patrol cars screeched into view. She adjusted her grip on the rod, ready for whatever betrayal might come screaming through those flashing lights. The patrol cars formed a rough semicircle, their headlights creating harsh shadows across the construction yard. Sergeant Barrow stepped out first, his polished boots crunching on broken glass. His face was a mask of professional concern, but his eyes gleamed with something darker as he surveyed the scene. "My God," he announced loudly, voice carrying for the benefit of gathering onlookers. "What happened here?" Nia and Marcus stood their ground, weapons still ready. Around them lay Dre's unconscious crew, some groaning, others silent. Dre himself remained crumpled where he'd fallen, blood trickling from his split lip. "Drop your weapons," Barrow commanded, hand resting on his holster. "Both of you, on your knees." More officers emerged from their vehicles, forming a line behind Barrow. Some looked uncertain, glancing between their sergeant and the Carter siblings. "No," Nia said clearly, her voice carrying across the yard. "We're not moving until independent officers arrive." Barrow's professional mask slipped for just a moment, showing raw hatred underneath. "You're in no position to make demands. Officers, weapons free. These suspects are dangerous and resisting arrest." The sound of multiple holsters opening echoed in the night air. Marcus tensed beside Nia, but she remained perfectly still, only her eyes moving as she tracked each officer's position. "Before anyone makes a career-ending mistake," Nia said calmly, "you should know this entire confrontation is being broadcast live." She nodded toward a small camera mounted on nearby scaffolding, its red light blinking steadily. "Including Sergeant Barrow's unnecessary escalation of force." Barrow's face twisted. "Shoot her! Shoot them both!" he barked, all pretense abandoned. "They're reaching for weapons." Several officers raised their guns, but others hesitated, clearly aware of the camera. One young officer, badge reading Martinez, actually lowered his weapon. "Sir," Martinez said, "they're not reaching for anything. And there are witnesses." I gave you an order, Barrow screamed, spittle flying from his lips. These thugs attacked upstanding citizens. They're violent criminals. Actually, a new voice cut through the tension. We have evidence suggesting otherwise. Officer Martinez's partner stepped forward, holding up a thumb drive, including your body cam footage showing coordination with Dre Mather's gang activities. Barrow's hand moved to his gun, but before he could draw, 3 officers tackled him from behind. His service weapon skittered across the concrete as they wrestled him into handcuffs. What is the meaning of this? A new voice boomed across the yard. Councilman Halvorson strode through the police line, his expensive suit incongruous among the tactical gear. I demand to know why officers are restraining Sergeant Barrow. Because we have proof, Councilman, Naya called out. She nodded to Rafa, who emerged from behind a stack of pallets with his phone held high, still streaming. Proof of your collaboration with Dre Mather to terrorize Harborview residents. Proof of Barrow's selective enforcement. Proof of the whole corrupt system. Halvorson's political smile faltered. That's ridiculous. I've always supported urban renewal. You mean forced displacement, Marcus cut in, his voice strong despite his injuries. Working with criminals to drive people from their homes. I would never, Halvorson began. But Rafa had approached with his phone, Mike picking up every word. Then explain this email chain, Rafa said, holding up his screen. Detailing payments to Dre's gang through shell companies. Coordinating pressure campaigns against specific residents. Including the order to target Marcus Carter before his City Hall testimony. Halvorson's face went chalk white. That's taken out of context. Barrow assured me the methods were legal. So you admit to working with Sergeant Barrow? Officer Martinez asked, pulling out a notepad. The councilman seemed to deflate as he realized what he'd said. His eyes darted between the cameras, the officers, and his own words hanging in the air. I want my lawyer, he whispered. More patrol cars arrived, these bearing internal affairs markings. Detective Sandra Chen stepped out, surveying the scene with sharp eyes. Sergeant Barrow, she announced. You're under arrest for corruption, conspiracy, and attempted murder. She turned to the councilman. Mr. Halvorson, you'll be coming with us as well. Officers moved forward with cuffs as Chen continued. We've been building this case for months. Tonight's live stream just gave us the final pieces we needed. They hauled Barrow to his feet. His face was a mask of impotent rage as officers recited his rights. Nearby, other cops were cuffing the still unconscious Dre and his gang members. Halvorson offered his wrists without resistance, his politician's poise finally shattered. Under the harsh construction lights, he looked old and small. Detective Chen approached Nia and Marcus. We'll need your statements, she said. But first, let's get medical attention for those injuries. Nia lowered her steel rod at last, exhaustion seeping into her muscles. Marcus swayed slightly beside her, and she steadied him with a gentle hand. The construction yard had become a sea of flashing lights and official vehicles. Crime scene techs photographed everything while EMTs treated the injured. Through it all, the live stream kept running, ensuring that what happened here couldn't be buried or twisted. Rafa stepped closer, phone still broadcasting. Any words for the viewers? He asked softly. Nia looked at the 3 architects of Harborview's terror, Dre, Barrow, and Halvorson, all in handcuffs under the floodlights. Justice wasn't just served. It was witnessed, recorded, undeniable. The truth always comes to light, she said simply, her arm around her brother's shoulders, no matter how hard they try to bury it. The autumn sun painted Harborview in warm gold, casting long shadows across the fresh pavement of Freedom Court. The new basketball court gleamed, its lines crisp and white against deep blue surfaces. Metal bleachers flanked both sides, already filled with community members dressed in their Sunday best. Nia stood at the edge of the court, a basketball net draped over her shoulder. The scars on her knuckles had faded to pink, but she could still feel the echo of that warehouse fight in her joints. She watched Marcus moving among the crowd, shaking hands and accepting hugs. His limp was barely noticeable now, though he still favored his right side when tired. "Hard to believe it's only been 6 weeks," Rafa said, appearing beside her. He wore clean EMT blues, having just finished his shift. "The trial went faster than anyone expected." "Evidence has a way of speeding things up," Nia replied, thinking of the countless video clips, financial records, and witness testimonies that had buried Dre's gang and their corrupt allies. The gang members had taken plea deals, turning on each other in exchange for lighter sentences. Dre himself got 20 years for orchestrating the violence, his tough guy facade crumbling when faced with federal charges. Several of his lieutenants were looking at decade-plus stretches in prison. Sergeant Barrow had tried to claim he was investigating from the inside, but his body cam footage told a different story. The recordings showed him coaching Dre on how to terrorize residents while avoiding serious charges. He was facing 30 years for corruption, conspiracy, and attempted murder. Councilman Halverson's fall had been particularly spectacular. Journalists uncovered a web of bribes, kickbacks, and offshore accounts tied to the redevelopment scheme. He'd resigned in disgrace, then cut a deal to avoid prison by exposing other corrupt officials. The scandal had forced a complete overhaul of the city's zoning board. The settlement money had been substantial, enough to renovate the rec center, rebuild the burned church hall, and construct this new court. More importantly, Harborview had been designated a protected historic district, safe from predatory development. Aunt Vi's voice rose above the crowd's chatter, strong and clear. "Let us gather round, family." The community formed a circle around the court's center line. Vi stood in her flowing purple dress, a hand-carved wooden box held carefully in her weathered hands. "In this box," she announced, "are the ashes from our burned hall. Today, we mix them with the soil beneath this court, so our children will always play on ground made sacred by sacrifice." She knelt slowly, her arthritic knees protesting, and scooped a handful of dirt from a prepared hole. The ashes went in, dark and fine, before she patted the earth back in place. "This spot marks the heart of Freedom Court," Vi continued, rising, "where we remember that victory comes not just from strength," she nodded to Nia, "but from unity, faith, and refusing to be moved." Marcus stepped forward, bouncing a basketball. The sound echoed sharp and clean off the fresh backboards. "First game starts in 10 minutes, he called out. "Junior League, show me what you got." Kids scrambled to line up, their excitement electric. Many wore new jerseys donated by local businesses, proper uniforms for the first time in Harborview's youth program history. Nia moved to the nearest hoop, unwrapping the net. The metal links chimed as she threaded them through the rim. This was the same model she'd used in high school, the kind that could withstand maritime air and rough play alike. "You know," Rafa said quietly beside her, "what you did wasn't just about saving Marcus that night. You carried him then, yeah. But in doing that, you ended up carrying all of us. Carried us right through to justice." Nia paused, the last loop of net in her fingers. "We carried each other," she corrected. "Every neighbor who joined patrols, every elder who testified, every kid who refused to be scared away from these courts." She secured the final knot and stepped back. The net swayed slightly in the breeze, catching sunlight like strands of silver. Marcus gathered his first group of players, demonstrating proper shooting form. His voice carried across the court, patient and encouraging as always. Some of these kids had witnessed the warehouse fight, had seen their coach beaten and taken. But here they were, back under his guidance, refusing to let fear win. A small brass plaque caught Nia's eye, mounted on the court's entrance pillar. She walked over to read it properly, Rafa following. The metal shone warm in the sunlight, its engraving deep and permanent. Freedom Court. Dedicated to those who refused to bow, Harbor View Strong, 2023. Not bad for a neighborhood they tried to erase, Rafa commented. The first whistle blew, sharp and clear. Kids scrambled into position, their shoes squeaking on the pristine court. Parents and grandparents cheered from the bleachers, while younger siblings pressed against the fence, eager for their turn. Marcus caught Nia's eye across the court and smiled. That same warm, unshakable smile he'd had since they were kids. Despite everything, they were still here, still standing, still home. "We don't run," Nia said softly, touching the plaque's surface. "We rise." Above them, the nets swayed like victory flags in the autumn breeze, while the next generation of Harbor View played on, unafraid and free. I hope you enjoyed that story. Please share it with your friends and subscribe so that you do not miss out on the next one. In the meantime, I have handpicked 2 stories for you that I think you will enjoy. Have a great day.